I love to cook at home, and having good kitchenware makes all the difference in the world. Not only does good equipment make prep and cooking easier, but it makes it more enjoyable. This is why I am a huge fan of Made in Cookware. Their wide range of cookware, from pots and pans to knives and flatware and even glassware, are designed to be professional quality for right in your home. I myself have over a dozen pieces from Made In, including pots, pans, pizza steel, knives, and a beer glass. Yeah, beer glassware. They have that all. Take your cooking to the next level by upgrading your cookware by going to unitedwedrink.com/madein. That's MADEIN. Find out why pros like Grant Achatz, Sean Brock, Nancy Silverton, and Eric Repair trust Made In. Go to unitedwedrink.com/madein and upgrade your kitchen and cooking today. The opinions and statements in this podcast do not represent those of the host's employers, co-workers, family, or imaginary friends. Now enjoy the show.
Happy hour? More like amateur hour. Welcome to United We Drink.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of United We Drink right here on unitedwedrink.com, as well as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and wherever fine podcasts are found. I feel like it's been a long time since I've done this intro with other people, so I don't know how it works really anymore. My name's Mike Urevich. I'm one of the guys who does this show on the regular. And with me, as usual, is my friend, my companion in life of the heterosexual variety, Kevin Abbott.
I don't know why you had to clarify heterosexual. There's no need for that. It doesn't matter what our sexual relationship is, Mike. The people don't need to know that. That's between you and I. So it is an honor and a privilege to be with you, Mike. It's nice to just be you and I. I really like the conversations we had on our interviews, but this a little more free form, and we get to make an ass out of ourselves more often when it's just the two of us talking.
Yes, and it just makes me think of me and you me, no matter how they toss the dice, it had to be. Don't. I've had a beer already.
Yeah. Good. Well, you were having some screaming children issues, I heard. So that's what you got to do. What better remedy than having a drink and talking with your old pal Kevin about booze?
Yeah, because just trying to ignore them when they're crying is not a very easy thing to do, especially when they just walk up to you and you're sitting on the floor and they just scream in your face. It's lovely.
In many ways, it's much easier when they're blobs, when they're just on their back in a bassinet of some sort. It's just much easier. And now when they can track you, wait till they're 5, and they can reach you at any point. They can turn the screws in many, many different ways. They have tactics then. And then you're going to be in trouble because they can coordinate. There's twins. They're going to be able to, you go high, I go low, kind of thing. It's going to be madness.
Once they get on the same page with one another, because right now they're friends probably about 30% of the time. They hate each other 30% of the time, and then the remaining what do I got left? 40%. They just don't even acknowledge one another. Last week I was chopping some broccoli, and I went over to the trash can to throw out all of the stems, and I hear behind me a little clink, 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 and Jack has his hand up onto the counter, and he is just with his fingers like hitting the handle of the knife. And I'm like, holy fuck. Like it felt like it was so far in from the edge, but their reach is getting silly right now, and it's scaring me.
And apparently he's coming for you. He's coming for that knife. He wanted that broccoli himself. He wanted to dominate the household, and you're in a lot of trouble.
Oh, which, by the way, that knife was given to me by you as a housewarming gift. Blade has broken twice on it. I've had to have it warranted once, and right now I'm just like going with it. I'm like, fuck it, I'm not warrantying this again.
Better a knife I bought you, Mike, than a knife that you bought you.
I like it. That's why I'm still using it. It's still sharp on the parts where I need to use it. It's very weird location where it chipped, but whatever. It's not impacting me. So after all of that, thanks for sticking around.
To UnitedWeSlice.com.
So Kevin, what are you drinking tonight?
I've got a couple things here, and I have a bottle of whiskey that was given to me over Christmas. It is the Oban Little Bay Scotch whiskey. I think I drank this on one of the more recent episodes, and I said it was the one I got from Costco, but I'm not sure that I got the name right because I have the memory of a goldfish. But it is the Little Bay by Oban, one of my favorite distillers, and a really nice Scotch.
Nice. I have a couple things here besides some lime spindrift. I have a bottle of Fat Tire, the original recipe, not the new recipe that they are now rolling out. So getting to enjoy a last little bit of the old OG Fat Tire before I can't find it anymore.
I wasn't aware they were doing a new recipe and that they were announcing it.
Well, maybe you should be online a bit more. It was all Twitter could talk about last week.
Why do I need to do that when I have you? You were my personal beer news ticker, and then you get the responses from me on this show. They're different levels of entertaining, but here, I'll try again. What?
Yeah, so it's more of a golden color now, and they say that the flavors should be kind of similar. They still have some of the toastiness of it, but be a much more easier drinking beer. And they've also changed up the branding on it it's much more clean and minimalist, and they're focusing on their environmental friendliness of being carbon neutral and things like that. So I'm looking forward to trying it. I just so happened to be, even before they announced this, I had a few bottles of it here because we got the variety pack that New Belgium had out at Costco that had Fat Tire 1554, Voodoo Ranger Imperial IPA, and it was cinnamon citrus triple. Everything in that pack was excellent. 1554 is one of my favorite beers of all time by New Belgium, and the triple was very tasty, very scary how easy it drank for a triple.
It's wild to think that a legacy brand like that, and I don't think you like that term very much, Mike, but
I don't mind it, but it does kind of sometimes have like a backhanded like
right.
feel to it.
It's basically like you're old is essentially what you're saying. It's like calling a person that is advanced in age wise. We all know what we're saying. You are an old fuck. That's what that means. But it's strange to think that a brand that's been around that long, that held such a unique position in the market. What other Belgian amber ale is there? It is a style and a brand onto itself. And the fact that they are not just, they launched multiple Fat Tires, like it was a brand as well.
Yeah.
And to think that they are not only just making a golden ale Fat Tire, but they are discontinuing the beer that has started the whole thing. There's got to let me try that again. There has to have been a lot of research and market trends that went into that to say it's time to pull the plug on on such a well-known beer.
Well, sales for it have been down, I think, for the past 5 years, I think it was. Someone, I'm sure we have a number of people from New Belgium who listen to the show who can probably correct me. But I mean, I think one of the best things that I read, there was a lot of people who were complaining about it. A lot of people were like, cool. A lot of people were like, I don't give a fuck. Um, but one of the best things I saw, and I'm going to paraphrase this, but it was from Michael Graham, who's one of the owners of Austin Beer Works. And he said, think of it this way. If your dog that you love is dying and you have the opportunity to try an experimental surgery that could save your dog and extend its life for a number of years, or just let it die, what are you going to do? And like, I think that it's fair to say a lot of people would probably try the experiment to keep this thing that they love so much alive. And I think that's what New Belgium's trying to do here, is to keep a brand that is very important to them and very important to a lot of people alive, and possibly reach other people as well.
But if they changed a beer completely, it's not really that thing. It's just using the same name for a different beer. Is it not?
Yes, but there's plenty of beers that are not the same recipe as they used to be,
Sure.
and not very many of them will tell you that they changed it over time. I think that this, and they were also very open about, like, and the recipe for Fat Tire has been tweaked over. It's never been like the original recipe. We've changed it considerably over times, but it was remained an amber ale. But I think that this is cool. I think this is unique, and it's a risk, for sure. And it's too early to tell whether or not that risk is going to pay off in any way. But I'm looking forward to trying it when we get it available down here.
It'll be interesting to see how different it is. And I don't want to belabor this at all, because I respect any brewery that takes, whether it's a drastic or a small step, in order to revitalize a brand or their own brewery. I mean, that's the most important thing, is that you stay successful, you keep employing your employees, and you go on and you provide lives for them and whatnot. So much respect to New Belgium in whatever they choose to do. But as you were saying that, I was thinking, depending on how different this beer is from the original Fat Tire or the tweaked Fat Tire, it might be more like your dog is dying. There's an experimental surgery that will make your dog a guinea pig. Do you go with that surgery, or do you let him die? Depending on how different it is, that could also be the avenue.
I don't see it that way at all, because you look at it like the brand is the dog. It's not the beer, it's the brand. And they're looking at keeping the brand alive.
Fair enough. I just wanted to work a guinea pig into this podcast.
Oh, was that your animal of the day calendar?
Yeah, so everybody that heard that's in the know, you know what to do. You have that means you have to go assassinate the president of Bolivia.
Don't come after us. I also have a little bit of a barrel aged gin that I'm sipping on from Calwise Distillery in California. It's called Big Sur. It is a collaboration that they did with Firestone Walker, and they used barrels that Firestone Walker used for beer, and aged some of their Old Tom gin in it, and it's very tasty. I don't usually just sit and sip on gins, even though I like gins a lot. But this is a really nice one. I've made a Negroni with it that was quite nice. But yeah, when I saw this come across my Twitter feed like a month ago, I was like, oh, I just bought it. Oh, sweet. That just happened.
I'd like to try that. I am not a big fan of gin. I like gin. I don't buy gin very often, but when it comes to what I was introduced as well-made sipping quality gins, if you want to call it that, I really enjoy them.
What would you consider a sipping gin? Like,
So, and this probably ties into what we're going to talk about in this episode, Mike.
I was just going to go with it.
But I, when I was first introduced to Bulldog gin, that was probably the first gin that I tried that, independent of tonic, I enjoyed drinking it. Hendrix was another one that I enjoyed just to sip. There's also the distillery, St. Augustine Distillery. The gin that I had from them that was straight was pretty good. And there's been some other ones that I've tried throughout the years that are escaping me, but those are the ones that jump out to me that I said, oh, I could sip this, or I could use this with minimal fluff, minimal thing. I don't need to mix it with tonic and a bunch of other things, maybe just a spritz of lime or something of that nature, and I would enjoy them that way.
Nice. I've never heard of Bulldog. I just looked that one up. But I agree with you. I'm with you with Hendrix. Love that one. It's usually a staple in our house. So gonna tell you all now what we wanted to talk about tonight, and that is the name of the podcast is United We Drink, not United We Drink Beer. There are other segments of alcohol out there that if you're a longtime listener to this podcast, you know that we enjoy drinking things that are not beer. We like spirits, we like wines. Some former hosts like seltzers. Kevin likes seltzers too, I guess. But
Okay.
We wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things outside of beer that we enjoy drinking, and talk about maybe trends that we're seeing in those segments as people who are in an adjacent field, I guess you could say, or adjacent industry with these folks. And going back real quick to you mentioning about gin, and saying St. Augustine, we were in St. Augustine a couple weekends ago, and we didn't do the distillery tour, but we went to the ice plant, the restaurant and bar right next door to them, or right inside of their distillery. Excellent food, excellent cocktails. Had a great time there, even though one of my boys burnt his mouth because he decided to grab a hash brown that was way too hot and just shove it into his mouth before it cooled off. He's fine. But that place is awesome. Great atmosphere there, and excellent cocktails. If you're ever in St. Augustine and you like good cocktails, you got to go to the ice plant. It's at the St. Augustine Distillery. So you'll have a great time there.
And Allie, my wife, was just there last weekend or the weekend before, like just after you guys were. She did a girls' trip with some friends of hers from high school. Yeah, and they were at the same spot. So I was very jealous. You both got a chance to go. Both of my significant others got a chance to go to the ice plant, and I did not. That doesn't seem fair at all.
You got me a mule cup from there. I think like a number of years ago when you guys went up there as a little gift.
That was one of our early trips as a couple. Yeah.
So I think it's safe to say that we really enjoy spirits. Maybe slightly different segments of it. Like I'm a big whiskey fan. I enjoy bourbons, ryes, scotches, and just like kind of everything in between. American whiskey. I, even because of Kevin, have learned to like Canadian whiskey, and I know Kevin is really into tequila. A thing that I try. I like, by God, I try, and it just very, very rarely ever hits me as like, oh, this is nice. There's just that twang to almost every one. But you You tell me a little bit about what draws you into tequila and why you like tequilas, and what are some of these good ones that you like?
So I'm far from an expert on the subject of tequila. I was really introduced to.
Oh, then don't talk. Then this is an expert podcast, experts only.
Okay, well then it's just going to be you for the rest of the night.
I'm an expert on everything.
I was really introduced to good tequila because I always thought that tequila was the clear shots you do when you are 20 years old, and the highest it could get, the best you could find was Patron. And it really took meeting my current partners at Barrel of Monks, who are tequila fanatics, who have, a couple of them, if not all of them, have been to Mexico, have gone and toured distilleries, and know these super high-end legacy brands of tequila. And because of their understanding and the availability they have to some of those brands, I've got a chance to try a litany of these tequilas that are, one, very good and oftentimes very expensive, and things that I certainly never would buy for myself. Not that I would never buy $100 bottle of tequila for myself. It would be a rare thing, but I certainly would never plunk down $100 on something I've never tried before. So some of those tequilas are up in that ballpark. So I was lucky enough. I mean, Jose Cuervo La Familia, Don Julio, was it 1492, 1942? One of those dates. As you can see, I'm an expert. These are two of the tequilas that I've been gifted by my partners over the years that I've really, really enjoyed. There's a bunch of them. What I have figured out about myself is that I tend to gravitate towards reposados. I like añejo tequila, but definitely reposados are a little more smoother and easy drinking for me. I do like a smoky aspect to a lot of tequila that is reminiscent of some of the peaty scotches that I first fell in love with, which was my first love in whiskey, was Scotch whiskey. And I like something with a nice barrel character. I like something with a little bit of caramel flavor to it. But one of the important things for me is I don't like a lot of sweetness. And a little sweetness is fine for any whiskey or tequila, but I don't like things that are overly sweet. And one of the things I noticed just very recently is I was purchasing a bottle of tequila for one of my partners because it was a New Year's Eve / retirement party for Bill McPhee. Congratulations, Bill. He's retired from radiology, and I wanted to get him a bottle of tequila for the occasion. And I went to Total Wine and More, and the shelves for tequila used to be like, call it 2-3 shelves. There's now 25, conservatively. There are more tequilas than I've ever seen before in my life. And I'm looking at the ratings that are there on the shelf because there's something to go by. I'm looking at the price point that I want to spend in because I feel like there is some correlation between price and quality, even though not always, but it's a good place to start when you don't know everything about the brands. And I'm just lost. I don't know where to go next. And this gentleman who worked at the store said, "Hey, I got the one for you. Try this." And he gave me what I can only describe as a tequila liqueur. It was just sweet and cloying and unpleasant. And I don't know if that's like a new trend, because what do we do, especially as Americans? We love sweeter things. Our sour beers now are basically just packed with sugar, for crying out loud. And that's the opposite of sour. So I realize that is just kind of what the American palate's into. But it wasn't for, I knew I didn't like it, and I knew that my partner wouldn't like it because he likes a more classic style drier tequila. And
so you
found myself,
got a chance to try it in store?
Yeah, I tried that one in store. If he hadn't had that open, I would have bought that on his recommendation, and it wouldn't have been a good tequila. And he ended up helping me out and pointing me in the right direction. But I guess what I was getting to is that with the plethora of options out there, and independent of the 93 score from Bob's Tequila Depot, because some of these aren't even publications, it seems like, that are giving these scores out anymore. It's just some random dude's website. How do you pick out?
Do they have any of my old ratings on beers out there?
I mean, if you wanted to, you could get some little stickers, I'm sure, and just walk up there and just stick them on to different brands that you have, and that's a good way to get your name out there.
Ed, get in touch with me.
I just find it really, really difficult for someone like me who knows a little bit but doesn't know a lot. And other than saying, "Oh, what is The Rock making right now?" or "What other celebrity is out there that has a tequila for me to buy? Do I pick?" How do I pick a quality brand? How do I know what I'm looking for?
Yeah, I can. I'm the same way with bourbon or whiskey more in general. Um, when I go to the store, first thing I always look for: do they have Buffalo Trace? No, that is the answer all the time. Because fuck, I don't know why. Um, then like I have my fallbacks. It's like Jefferson's, very small batch. Any of the Four Roses were like I even like Yellow Label. But I there was a sale on Single Barrel a few right before the holidays, and it was like $30 for a bottle of that. So I was like, okay, I'm definitely getting that. Um, and Old Forester, Woodford Reserve, those things are kind of my go tos. High West, their bourbon and their rye, especially their rye, are my go tos. But I I am a little uneasy sometimes spending money on something that I don't know what I'm going to get because I've had whiskeys that just burn like hell or are super sweet, especially on the bourbon side of things. And it's like I don't want to spend a whole lot of money on something like that. The most I've ever spent on a bottle of whiskey was I think like $85 for a Jefferson's at Sea. And I knew what I was getting because I had it in one of my advent calendars before. And I was like, okay, I know that I like this. So I'm willing to spend the money on that. Outside of that, like I like to be under $40. Sometimes I'll go up to 50 for something new, because I I don't know what to expect and I don't want to be burned. I also can be a creature of habit who just likes what I like, and I will just keep on going back to that. Um, I've found that the Jefferson's brand, like of their family of stuff, tends to be on the affordable side, like all things considered. And I don't think I've ever had anything bad from them. My wife got me, I think it was a cab finished bourbon for Christmas that was fantastic from them. And but I find myself going to rye a lot more often, and like Angel's Envy's rye is always a solid one. I said High West. I'm liking the little bit more spice character. I know Tim Johnson hates saying spice for a flavor uh, note because he thinks of like spicy and people because people don't understand what we mean by that. Um, that it could mean rye, caraway, or it could mean chili pepper and all of that. But yeah, like I tend to keep a pretty nice bar at my house because we like to make cocktails, and so always
I can
having like
attest to that, by the way.
to what
I, I can attest to that. I just want to make sure
oh,
everybody knows that you're not just saying that and not coming through on the promise. You have a very well curated bar. Go on.
because yeah, we have our cocktails that we like. My wife loves martinis, so we always have to have like a nice gin, and dry vermouth on hand, and we love Negroni, so there's always going to be Campari. There's always going to be a couple different sweet vermouths that we go to, and just always have our whiskeys to sip on, and um, some aperitifs for some or digestives. I don't I'm sure I am not an expert. Although you said something earlier now that I'm going back to. This should be a t-shirt. Can't you see I'm an expert? The t-shirt
Mike,
that no one buys.
So, Mike, I have a question for you about whiskeys. But before that, I realized you did ask me some of my favorite brands of tequila, and I mentioned like some very high-end brands. As far as some lower-end brands that I actually do buy on a regular basis, one is a Painted Donkey, which is relatively inexpensive, and I just found it and really, really enjoyed it. And another one is Casul, not Casa Azul, which I believe, and all these pronunciations, just realize that they're wrong. So just don't tell us in a comment. I understand I can't speak Spanish, but as far as I know, Casa Azul is like a ceramic, large white and blue painted bottle, which is very expensive, which is very, very good. But Cazul is more of a short, squat bottle. Think a Patron bottle, and from the silver to the extra añejo, you're talking at the most, I think, like $65. And the Reposado and the añejo are very good and budget, in my budget, and absolutely delicious. But other than that, Mike, to ask you a question about this industry that kind of ties in a little bit with what we see in the craft beer industry, I see more and more flavored whiskeys. We saw this several years back when we saw, I think it was Crown Royal did an apple flavor, and of course we have like the Fireball kind of thing, cinnamon flavors. We've seen them creep in over time, but I'm seeing tons and tons of like birthday cake and all these wild flavors to whiskey. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I tried one a couple years ago. We made our own advent calendar because it was COVID, so we just each picked out little airplane bottles at Total Wine and wrapped them up and made our own little thing. And one of them that came out in there was I just looked up the company. Scatterbrain is the name of the distillery. A peanut butter whiskey. It was atrocious. And apparently they make a ton of like flavored whiskeys, and it's just a thing that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. A lot of the stuff that's flavored in the spirits game has always been like vodka, which are more neutral flavors as a base. Whiskey has a lot of flavor and character going on in it as a base, and to then put a whole bunch of stuff into it just seems counterintuitive. And I do realize by saying that someone's probably like, fucking pastry stouts, fucking stouts and sour. Like, yes, I know you're right. And all of that stuff is done in beer. So why can't it be done in whiskey? I don't know. I don't think that there's a pureness thing to it in my mind. Maybe there is a little bit of it. You know, I can be a little bit of a holier than thou person with things like that. But I mean, I've tried Fireball years and years and years ago, and it's certainly not my thing. But I know that it sells a hell of a lot, and I have noticed some more of them, but I don't give them a whole lot of attention. I did get in my Total Wine digital coupons for the month a coupon for $3 off Scatterbrain whiskey, which I am not going to use. But yeah, I don't know if they're doing well, but I do see a lot of them.
So, on its surface, peanut butter flavored whiskey sounds disgusting. I have when you say that, I have absolutely no desire to try it. Do you think that, and you mentioned this about, yes, we have pastry stouts. I might be biased because I'm in the beer industry, but do you think that this renaissance, this flavored, and even when you're looking at the bourbon barrel versions of red wine that I see regularly now, several different brands doing, Do you think that is a direct copy or looking at the beer industry and seeing the variation? Because I remember when I first got into beer, and the guy who got me into craft beer said that craft beer was more complex than wine, because that was what the business I was in previously, because we have more ingredients with more variety, and you can use extraneous ingredients. You can use passion fruit if you want to use passion fruit. You can use peanuts if you want to use peanuts. You can do all these different things. You can use basil if you want, and it can still be within the beer category. What you're talking about with whiskey and what you're talking about with wine, these are a little more stodgy. These are even more classic in some ways. Never really broached those things, or at least I never saw them until the culinary aspect of beer popped up and got popular.
Whether or not this is, I'm gonna go out and say no. I don't think that beer is responsible for this, but I do think that it is something you kind of alluded to earlier. Is the general palates of a lot of consumers is heading towards a sweeter side of things, and sweeter flavors sell, and that is probably what those flavored whiskeys are going at. The bourbon barrel aged wines, I've had a few of them in the past number of years, and I've found them to be pretty tasty. I don't get a whole lot of bourbon character out of them. I've looked at them as a kind of marketing gimmick. Like, sure, they went into a bourbon cask for how long? What, 10 days? Just so that you can say
6
that
hours.
yeah. You say that you did it. I get it, and it is something that caught my eye as a not very big wine drinker, and my wife brought home a bottle once many years ago. I think we were still dating and very early on, and she's like, "This could be cool," and I'm like, "Yeah, I'll give this a try." And I was like, "Oh yeah, this tastes all right." But I mean, there's so much to gimmicks in the beverage world as to what you can say and what you can get away with saying, that could draw in a new customer and sell a product. You have bourbon barrel aged wine, sweet. I mean, this gin I'm drinking is a beer barrel aged gin, and I bought it just off of like Firestone Walker gin barrel. Like, okay, I'm in, and then 2 minutes later, I'm like, oh, what did I just do? I was a victim of consumerism. Um,
Happens to the best of us, Mike.
Yeah. I mean, I think that that's why you have so many celebrity endorsed spirits now. Like you were talking about The Rock with a tequila. He has a tequila, right?
I have no idea.
Clooney
Possibly.
has a
He has some
tequila?
kind of booze. Everybody has something. I would not be surprised, Mike, if you found out tomorrow that you have a tequila and you just weren't aware of it, because you are a minor celebrity in the podcast world. So you might as well have some kind of spirits. Maybe you have a vodka. I'm not sure. You have something.
Where's my money then?
I didn't say it was successful. So talking about these flavors that we're seeing in that industry, I feel like that I am old enough to have seen the first bottle of Stoli raspberry. I feel like I am in that generation that at one point I was at a bar and they did not have that, and then they had it the next day. And that felt to me like the first flavored spirit that I'd ever seen. Now, I was in my early 20s at the time, so I just might not have been cognizant of it. Maybe it happened in the 80s and I'm not aware of it. But it seems like it's kind of ratcheted up really, really quickly. And I did bartend for a short period of time. I wasn't good at it. I never made my own special cocktail that was drinkable, but I could follow a recipe. And I was aware of the fact that using a Stoli raspberry or cranberry when you made your Cosmo was lending some of the extra flavor to that, and it could work. I wonder when we talk about whiskey, and I want to stress, I'm on board with you. I don't like flavored whiskeys for the most part. And then I think, but I love an old fashioned. An old fashioned, when it's made correctly, has a cherry and an orange and some extra sugar. And those are flavors where if you gave me a cherry orange with bourbon that already had those flavors in there, wouldn't I essentially be making an old fashioned? And then I remembered, wait a minute, I used to buy Slow and Low on a regular basis.
Slow and Low, yeah.
And that had, and I can't remember, that has orange in it, or it has a couple different
It's sugar,
flavors.
and it is a old fashioned in a bottle or a can. Yeah.
Essentially, yeah. So, and I enjoyed that. So if we make cocktails where we add lime to a gin, or we add, you see a lot of blackberry old fashions. That's something that I've seen multiple times out there. I have seen a peanut butter old fashioned, or using different of those flavors. Well, if they're mixed at the bar and we like those flavors together, wouldn't it make sense that we like them in the bottle automatically mixed? Or is it the fact that those flavors in the bottle are extracts? They're synthetic flavors. They're not real because then they wouldn't be shelf stable. Is there a difference between the wild, crazy cocktails that I know you and I would drink and enjoy, and the bottle on the shelf that seems like it doesn't belong?
I think that there is a difference, and while I don't tend to go towards a really wild and crazy flavor like a peanut butter old fashioned, like I don't know if I would spend the money on one of those myself, because cocktails are expensive. But like if my wife were to buy one, I would take a sip. But I do understand that an old fashioned is like a flavored version of that, and I never thought of it really in that way. But you're making it right there, usually with more fresher ingredients. Well, and also like an old fashioned, it's sugar and bitters. Really, that should be the only thing. I don't like muddled fruit in my old fashioned. I just keep a cherry away from it, and if you're going to give me an orange, just the peel at the end. I prefer a lemon peel with my old fashioned anyway. But all I want is just sugar, bitters, whiskey, and that's an old fashioned to me. But yeah, I've had whiskey cocktails that have like a blackberry bramble. I've made them myself, like with when we lived in Philly, the farmers market that we would go to on Sundays. I bought local blackberries, local mint, bought a couple limes from the grocery store, and made my own blackberry brambles at home, and they were fucking delicious. I love what blackberry can do with lime, mint, and some whiskey. But I don't think that comes across the same way in an already packaged bottle that is, like you said, probably extracts to be shelf stable. And flavored stuff has just always not been a thing to me that I've enjoyed. Like I remember at my earliest days of drinking, like all the absolute flavors. I mean, I didn't try them, but you could see them at some bars, just all these blue bottles of Absolute just lined up like Citron and fucking birthday cake at like what?
The pepper one was one of the early ones for Bloody Marys.
I didn't even know that they had that.
Mm-hmm.
Like there were so many flavors of that, and it just to me seemed like, whoa, that's too much for me. But I mean, they obviously sell that and they probably have tried out so many things and canned ones, but the ones that they keep around, they sell, so they must do well. Like I remember listening to an episode of Good Beer Hunting's podcast. They had someone on from I think it's called Fusion, the company that makes Four Loko and Not Your Father's and all of that. And one thing that I was really intrigued by was how they would come up with so many new things, and if it didn't work, they can it like within 6 months. Like This isn't working. Let's move on to something else. And their willingness to just admit defeat on so many things, but to be like, we hit gold with this and that and whatever. Um, I found that somewhat endearing. Is yeah, they're trying out whatever, they're throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks. But um, I think that a lot of those companies are trying that with those flavors, just seeing what actually sticks.
You have to stand out in some way. And when you've got, like I was talking about with the tequilas, where you've got 20 shelves full of tequilas, and I'm asking the question, how does one stand out? How do I decide one versus the other? And it's the same thing. I don't buy a lot of bourbon anymore. I do have bourbon brands that I like. I like Blanton's. I like Noah's Mill. I like Maker's Mark. I like simple kind of, classic call bourbons. And I'm the same thing with Irish whiskeys and Canadian whiskeys. I often buy these items as gifts, and buying a bottle of whiskey for you, Mike, for Christmas. All I can do is go there and look at interesting descriptions. This is wheated. This has this kind of flavor profile, and it got 94 points in some review. Okay, I'll give that a try. And when you can look at that and you're perusing the aisle and you come across a flavor that you like, whether it's dark cherry or blackberry or apple, a lot of people jump on top of that. And I'm sure they sell well, as you said, because they continue to do it. I just have no interest in those. I really, really don't like the idea. And it's strange because I'm drinking right now a pineapple spindrift, right? I would happily drink a flavored seltzer, a hard seltzer. I'd happily drink tons of different flavors in the beers that Barrel of Monks makes. I might not like some of the more extreme ones that are out there these days, but I do find myself to be much more conservative. And I'm pretty conservative in the beer world too, but even much more conservative when it comes to my spirits and my wine.
Yeah, and when I think of wine, which I'm very novice on wine. Like my wife got me into wine, and it's still a thing that I don't drink a terrible lot, even though it's usually available in my house. It's usually with a particular type of meal, or if we're out and about and we go to like a wine place, like a tasting room, or just a place that is known for having a really nice wine selection. But I tend to look at flavor notes on wines more than I would on a spirit, because I think that I am not as adventurous, or I know exactly what I like in wine more so than spirits. I'm whiskeys, even a bad whiskey to me, to my taste, I'm still gonna drink that drink because it might burn a little, it might be a little bit sweet, but it's not gonna be terrible. Where with wine, like with reds, I'm always looking for blackberry, cherry, like
And
flavors.
jammy.
Yeah, jammy. That's what I want in my reds. And then with whites, it's pretty much stone fruit and citrus. Like I love uh
New Zealand
Sauvignon
Sauvignon
Blancs.
Blancs.
Yeah. Uh, like those are the things that I know, because if I get too far out of there, like I start getting diacetyl in some wines, like reds and whites, and I
course you
fucking
do.
hate that. Like, and
Of course you do.
I don't like too much peppery notes in reds, like black pepper or green bell pepper. Um, and it's and some are just overly sweet, and it's just like I pay more attention to tasting notes, or the little descriptors on placards or on bottles when I'm looking for wines. And I don't get too adventurous with them. Like I know brands that I like Maomi's Pinot Noir. I know that like I can always enjoy that one. And it's I can't actually even think of another brand off the top of my head that I like for wine.
Well, speaking of wine, I do want to mention, and what better place to do it than the podcast that other people are listening to. But Allie and I did drink the bottle of Amarone that you and Allie got us, and it was absolutely delicious. We freaking loved it. So thank you for that, because it was big and rich and jammy, and that's a style of Italian wine that a lot of them tend to be a little more earthy, and that is just super extracted and big and fruity. So that's a style of wine that I like. I'm with you on that. I like a little more nuance in my wine because I spent so much time in the wine industry, and I like some of the more earthy flavors, the peppery flavors in some of the classic Italian styles. But I too am gravitating more towards the bigger, Zins, Shiraz, things of that nature.
Yeah, I mean that. What was it? What was that style that you said again that we gave you? Amarone?
It was an Amarone.
Okay,
Amarone.
so that's becoming one of my wife's favorite styles of wine. Our next door neighbor last year for Christmas gave us a bottle of one for Christmas, and we really liked it. She started to pick them up when she would go to a store, so she's really enjoyed that variety. So she wanted to share one that she liked with you guys. So very happy to hear that you liked that one.
Yeah. No, we definitely appreciated it. Yeah, I used to be so much into the wine industry, and and being kind of stodgy in the styles and the expression of being able to say, listen, this is what an actual Tuscan Cabernet tastes like, and it should taste this way. And then finding one that was just a little over extracted and tasted more like a California version. Well, that wasn't what I was looking for. So it was good, but not what I was expecting. And that's where the crossover comes in I remember when we started drinking pale ales, and I know we were not talking about beer, but to give a correlation, I remember when I first drank my first pale ale that was just an IPA. It was already 70 IBUs or 80 IBUs, and it was how is this a pale ale as opposed to an IPA? What was the delineation line to it? And I feel like in other spirits and wine, because you have like rules, like if you were a Cabernet, and this at least used to be the case, if you were a California Cabernet, you had to be at least 75% Cabernet grapes grown in California. You could blend in up to 25% of other grapes from different regions if you wanted to, but there was a consistency in that. And in different wine regions throughout the world, if you're a Chianti, you have to be Sangiovese at least at 95% and grown in the Chianti region. So because of some of these rules, Champagne has to be from Champagne, France, right?
Yeah.
Has to be 3 different grapes and has to be from this region. You would get uniformity. Even though there would be differences, you'd get something that was relatively similar. So if you like Amarone, then you are drinking Corvina, Rondinella, and Molinara grapes. They have to be dried for a period of time after picking and then used to make this wine. So you know what you're getting to a certain degree. And I feel like now we have a little more of the wild, wild west, obviously in the beer industry, and it's kind of creeping into the wine industry more and in the spirits industry more. And it does make things a little more confusing.
See, yeah, I could see that just by how you were explaining, because I didn't know that something called Cabernet Sauvignon could have something else in it. Like I didn't know there was a percentage thing, because at least that I've seen, those bottles don't say so.
No.
Like only for the things that are like a big blend of multiple things do you usually see a list of different grape varieties. But now knowing that, like, if I'm drinking a cab, I like that there could be Zin and other grapes in there. I didn't realize that.
Different rules in different areas, right? Different countries regulate these things differently. But they try to make sure that it's predominant, right? The predominant grape that you're using in this, so you're not being shady in any way, shape, or form. But it's a little bit like the spice that you add, right, to heighten flavor and things of that nature.
Well, like that brings me to a thing I learned a couple of years ago about whiskeys, in that I know that this is for Scotch. I don't know if it's the same for bourbon. let's just say it is for argument's sake, and you can correct me in the comments.
Or don't, or just take it as gospel, put it on Wikipedia. Let's go.
That when you see an age on a bottle, that is not the age of the entire spirit, because you have usually blends going on with that, but it is the age of the youngest that has gone into the blend. So when you see like Macallan 10, the youngest scotch in that blend was 10 years old. There could be 20-year-old scotch in it, but they go off of what is the youngest of all of the blends that go into that, because almost everything is blended, and usually cut as well with some water to bring the proof to where you need to, unless it's cask strength, at which then it is what is come straight out of the barrel. There's single barrel. There's like all the stuff with the malt builds to all of this. Like I remember listening to some of this and being like, holy fuck, I only have so much room in my brain for information. I need to remove stuff in order to take all of this in, because it's like, is this going to become a thing that I'm really passionate about and want to know all of this? Or is this going to remain a hobby and I keep little tidbits? I decided to go with the hobby thing and just take in little tidbits, because God damn, there's a lot to know and learn about just the labeling of these things.
Mike, take it from me. The best possible outcome is knowing 2 or 3 facts that make you sound smart when you're in a group of people. Because then you can drop those facts. People think you're a genius. They like, oh man, I talked to Mike. This guy knows everything about whiskey and beer and everything else. And you don't actually have to be an expert. You can just know a few things. It's worked well for me. For most of my life. I expose myself when I go on this podcast very often, but regularly at dinner parties, I'm quite knowledgeable and charming. None of it's true; it's all a facade. I too was in one way like seduced by the spirits industry and whiskey, and at one point I thought like this is going to be my next thing. I got into wine first. I got into beer. I want to learn distilling. I want to really do a deep dive. I love the idea of talking to somebody that was like a blending master that could take 1,000 casks and blend them together perfectly to make their house style of their regular scotch. That's amazing to me. I love the idea of that, and I love the knowledge and the history that goes into it. And that's one of the things that I appreciate so much about these spirits, and maybe one of the reasons why I want to kind of protect the legacy of them in the same way that I want to protect the legacy of certain beer brands, because I know how good they are as they are. They don't need a lot more help. And if I'm going to drink very often a blackberry bramble, I know that I don't need the best bourbon to make a blackberry bramble. If I want my best bourbon, I want to drink that neat. And I just want a good, adequate bourbon to make my blackberry bramble. I just want to challenge myself to say that as many times as possible and see how many times I would screw it up.
Best bourbon blackberry bramble. Best bourbon blackberry bramble. Yeah, and that's a thing that I've kind of learned myself over the years, is that when I'm making a cocktail, I tend to not use my expensive stuff to make them, because I feel like you're going to kind of waste your money, where more middle of the road to even in certain cases cheaper stuff will do the job just fine. And I guess it also does depend on what cocktail you're making. Now, a martini might be a little more different, where it's just gin and vermouth, and what gin you use can greatly impact the flavor of that. But I do think with like a blackberry bramble, I can just use Four Roses Yellow Label, a $20 bottle of something for that. and it's going to be all just fine. I Even for an old fashioned, I don't when people are like, what kind of rye? I go, I'll have a rye old fashioned. What kind of rye do you want? I have this, I have that. I'm like, whatever the cheapest one that you have is, to make it the cheapest old fashioned that you have, because like and in many cases, like that rye is like, oh, it's High West. Like, okay, awesome. Like, that's a great one. Like, to even Templeton, if you give me a Templeton rye old fashioned, I'm gonna be very happy. And it's some of that stuff is unnecessary to get into the high dollar stuff for cocktails. Sure, it can make it better, but is it going to be like $5 better for your cocktail, or $40 better for the bottle that you have in your house? Probably not. I'll save the expensive stuff for sipping, like you said. Usually why I have a few whiskeys in in the house.
Good man.
I am a good man. Um, so we're going on close to an hour here. Um, what else is there anything else that you want to mention about this? Because you were thinking that this is something that we could touch back on in a second episode.
Well, I like the idea of the fact that we consider ourselves, and I say this loosely, as experts in the industry of beer, because we have both spent many, many years in the industry in different ways. And Mike specific, I mean, both of us really, of working in the cellar, doing operations. We've both worn a lot of hats, so we know different aspects of the business. But we're passionate about several things outside in adjacent industries, and we're not experts on that. So I thought it would be funny, what have you, funny maybe for other people to listen to hear our thoughts about different industries that maybe other people have more information on, and then kind of touch on the idea of how we give constructive criticisms to industries that we're not experts in, and how we receive that. And this is kind of a good example of our thoughts on these industries, the spirits industry, that we only have very limited knowledge of, but we have passionate thoughts about them. I mean, we spent the last hour laying down the law and saying the way we like to see things done.
Yeah. So yeah, maybe we'll talk. Wait, Kevin wants to say something. He held his finger
And
up.
also, we should revisit this entire idea of different adjacent industries and talk about the non-alcoholic market, all these new, non-alcoholic mocktails that are coming out. There's a lot of things that are related in some way to our industry that are happening all around it all the time.
Yeah, very true. I just I bought a 6-pack of Sierra Nevada hop water over the weekend. It was $8 at Whole Foods, so I bought some. Okay, it was much drier than I was expecting it to be. Really good hop flavor, but dry as a bone. And it does not have the refreshing like character that I think of with like flavored seltzer water. Like when I have a Spindrift, like the citrus, the fruit gives a very refreshing feeling to it. And when I put that out on Twitter, I had a few people that agreed with me on that, and even one person saying like they should put a little bit of citric acid in it to give a tiny bit of tartness and that refreshing feeling. And I was like, yeah, I kind of agree with that. But yeah, it's a segment that I really am interested in and enjoy kind of already, because I love kombucha, and that's a thing that is part of kind of that segment. So it's
Wellness brands, as they call them.
Yeah. So it's something that I would definitely be for talking about a little bit more in the future. Having some more gin. In that case, let's head on in to our last calls, the part of the show where we give each other an unspecific amount of time to talk about whatever it is that we would like, uninterrupted, unopposed, unobjected. I'll start things off here this week. I was just the other day made aware of the fact that the band Thrice, a band who I've always liked. I wouldn't call myself a super fan of them, but they released an album back in 2003 called The Artist in the Ambulance, and it was a phenomenal album. An album that I think was very important to their genre of music at the time, of the kind of post-hardcore genre, and love that album. To celebrate the 20th anniversary of that album, they decided to not re-release, but re-record the entire album. And they just released it today, the day that we're recording this. And I listened to it this morning on my way to work, on my way home from work, a little bit at work. And it's fucking awesome. It slays. It has so much of the character of the original album. I mean, it's all the same songs, but you can hear some little differences in how they play things. The lead singer's voice is slightly different 20 years later. And I think that this is something that I would love to see a lot of other bands do, is re-record an old album. We've seen in hardcore and punk a lot of bands reuniting to play festivals and concerts, go on tour, or doing entire album sets of an old album. And I think that that's all cool and great. They get to make a big chunk of change from those dates. But something like recording an album and putting it out there again, you get to make money pretty much continuously if you have a good, like, I guess, contract with the streamers. Do some vinyl, maybe do a little tour off of it. This is something that I would love to see more of from that era of music, from hardcore punk bands, metal bands, from the early aughts, of just re-recording their big albums, the ones that were most important. So if you're a fan of Thrice and didn't know about this, go check out the re-recording of The Artist in the Ambulance. It's on Spotify and all of those places right now. If you're not a big fan and you want to check it out, do that too. I don't fucking make any money off of this. But yeah, Kevin?
I just want to mention that is kind of similar to what you're talking about, or in the same vein. You know, Brad was just out in California recording new music for Poison the Well.
I did not. Are we breaking news here?
Possibly, and maybe I just got myself in trouble, but yeah. So be on the lookout for that. Like, there's a big crossover there, and all of a sudden it's going to get out.
Yeah.
Anyway, my last call is revolving around a person that many of us know, and his name is Joel Codner. Joel, who was predated me by a long time on United We Drink, and who was also my head brewer at Barrel of Monks for over 2 years, and a friend of mine that we have talked forever about how we all work together in the industry. By the time you guys listen to this, Joel will have spent his last day as the head brewer of Barrel of Monks. He is not just leaving Barrel of Monks, he is leaving the brewing industry and going to do some other stuff. And I had the pleasure of having Joel as a friend before he came to work for Barrel of Monks, and I had the pleasure of working with Joel for over 2 years at Barrel of Monks. And I'm really happy that he's happy in the decisions that he's making and doing something for himself and for his family. Nothing brings me more joy than a friend and also an employee, making their lives better and doing what they feel is right for themselves. But I'm going to be sad. I'm going to be sad not to have him around the brewery. I've got to know Joel even more over the years, and we have such similar sensibilities, and at the same time, we disagree on everything. which is a really odd thing to love all the same things, get all the same jokes, and then go see, Thor: Love and Thunder, and he loves it, and I think it's the worst movie of all time. But then to be able to sit down and talk about it and understand each other's perspective, and just to have those random moments at the brewery where we're making beer and we're focused on how do we make more Wizard? How do we make more Waypoint? What do you think about Thor: Love and Thunder? And just to go off and talk for 45 minutes with a friend in the middle of a day about something so mundane and so simple, but something that we're both so passionate about and we enjoy so much, has been a joy, an absolute joy. It was a great move to bring Joel in, and he's done wonderful things for the brewery. He's helped to make us better. He's helped to stabilize the position, and we will miss him. We will absolutely miss him. And I just hope that I get a chance to spend some small modicum of time going forward, because we both have kids, we both have lives. But to make the time to see each other every now and again is going to be a priority of mine, because I love you, man. Joel, we're going to miss you.
Very nice. Yeah. Happy and sad for Joel all in one. But yeah, it was actually if he's mad that I'm revealing contents of a text message, then he can be mad at me. But he texted me the other day about how, like, there's some feelings, man. Like with it, like I'm happy with the decision that I'm making, but knowing that this is my last week, like some stuff is bubbling up, and you're having some feels, and I'm like, this has been your life for the last 11 years. Like, it's completely normal for you to feel that way about and reminisce. Like, I didn't say this to him, but I mean, I remember my last day at our first brewery, and despite that I was very much overworking there, I was happy to leave, and I was looking forward to taking some time off after 5.5 years there. I remember putting my key on my desk, walking out through the brewery on a Friday night. Like the tap room was going and pumping, but I was walking through the brewery and just looking at it all one last time. And then when I reached the door, I just turned around, looked at it, and then turned back around and walked out. Like, there was stuff going on. There was feelings despite all of that, because it was a change in my career there. I met a lot of people there. I learned a lot there, and I can say whatever negative things that I want about ownership, management, or whatever there. But I'd be lying if I didn't say that I learned a lot. Or I'd be lying if I said I didn't learn a lot there, and it didn't impact me and bring me to where I am today. So yeah, I know we don't go into other people's last calls, but this is Joel. So yeah, I'm
Monster. You monster. Listen, when you leave the industry, when you leave a place, there's emotionality attached to it, because we care. That's the one thing that I have to say, is that Joel gave a shit about every job he's ever had in this industry. He's going to give a shit about his next job. He gives a shit about his family. He gives a shit about his friends. And the best compliment I can ever give to somebody who, and this is just devoid of friendship, but that works for me, is that I trust them implicitly. I trust their judgment. I trust that they have our best interest in mind. I trust that they're trying to do the right thing. I'm lucky. I've got 3 people in my brewery, and one's leaving. But when Joel's gone, who I trusted implicitly, I've got Ralph and Ben, who I trust implicitly. And I know that they're going to work their asses off, and I know that they care. And that's rare. It's rare to have that.
Yeah, it really is. All right. Kev, you want to plug anything?
What do I got to plug?
I don't know.
Nothing. drink barrel amongst beer. We've got an anniversary party
There
coming
you
up in a couple
go.
months.
There you go.
What else you want me to plug? I'm not on social media. I've got nothing
You
else
should
going
be.
on that I should be. Do
You
I need to
should be.
do I need to fill the void and become angry on Twitter? So that we have one person on United We Drink who is an angry Twitter person. I shouldn't be speaking at this point.
No, you should be as a owner of a brewery and know what's going on in your industry and network with other breweries. Stay up to date on trends. Also, it'd be nice to have someone else to help promote this show other than me. But
That is your cross to bear, my friend. And as I always go back to, you are the one that tells me what's going on in the industry. You have there's a lot on your shoulders here.
what happens if I'm not in this industry anymore? And then what are you going to do? I'm going to start charging you for these conversations. It's a consulting fee.
These are basically therapy sessions already, Mike. So if we need to work something like that out, that'll be fair.
I don't take insurance. If you want to follow me, I'm at Mike Loves Beer on Instagram and Twitter. I just want to say I'm really proud of some of the I've said this before, but I'm going to do it again because I've made 2023 the year of my hustle. I'm really proud of some of my photography that I've been doing lately. So go check out my Instagram with like some likes over there. And if you really like the stuff, you can buy prints from me. They're available. By the time this comes out, if you go to unitedwedrink.com/photos, it will take you to where you can buy my prints. That would be awesome. Or if you want to support the show, you can go to our website, unitedwedrink.com, and check out the brands that we love page. Includes things like Made in Cookware, Liquid Death, Athletic Brewing's NA Beer. We also just got hooked up with Trade Coffee. It's a subscription-based service where you can get new bags of coffee delivered to you on whatever type of interval that you would like, and they can send you stuff from all over the country. Some really great coffee roasters available there. All of those, you go to the links on that page and you buy something, it goes and benefits this show. It pays for our hosting services. That's basically it. We also have our store, unitedwedrink.com/store, where you can get a shirt, button, sticker, and totes, whatever. All that's available there. We are at United We Drink on Twitter. We're at United We Drink Pod on Instagram. And on all of the major podcast services. All of the people who have joined us over the last couple episodes, thank you so much. We hope that you stick around. Please reach out to us and tell us if you think that there is a topic that you'd like to hear us talk about, a person that you'd like to see us talk to. Go back and listen to the archives. We have over 80 episodes and a few mini episodes back from the 2020 era that you can listen to. We're really thrilled that you have found us and hope that you stick around. In the meantime, we'll be back in a couple weeks to talk more about this weird, wild industry that we consider our careers. Cheers.
Cheers.